Right, what's up everyone? Now we're in game number 3. And this one's exciting. I'll tell you why, because in the first day, we won both of our games. So the ego was high, the passion, everything, whatever you want, was up there. I was excited to come into day 2. I felt like I had only 6 games in the tournament, so I felt like I was close to winning, even though it's 2 out of 6. So I decided that the night after the first day, after the 2 wins, to go and celebrate. My friend called me up, even though I told him I'm not going to go out with them in the weekend, I'm just going to focus on the tournament. I decided, you know what? Let's go out. Let's go out. We went out, we had fun, and then I came home at 3 to 4 a.m. and I ended up sleeping 3 hours before that tournament, or before day 2 of the tournament. And yeah, so I'm not giving any spoilers or hints or excuses, but let's see how I performed in day number 2, which is 2 classical games, 90 plus 30, and first one was at 10 a.m. Let's start. So I always start with white in the first game, and I played e4. And again, I played e4, and I was hoping that I don't face another Caro, because I was just actually bored and wanted to try something different. So my opponent plays Sicilian. He plays the Sicilian defense, which is impressive because he was 800 rated, but then he told me that he hasn't played in a while in tournaments, but his real rating is at least like 1600 on chess.com. So he fires the Sicilian against me, and I go for my favorite all-time gambit, which is Smith-Morrow. The Smith-Morrow gambit, in my opinion, is an absolute weapon against Sicilian, especially those who don't know how to defend it, because there's so many different traps, so many good positional tactics, and so on and so forth. I don't want to start spitting words that don't make sense but sound good. So here he fires d5, which is, this is what you're supposed to do in the tournament. So here I'm already +1, believe it or not. But the only way I'm +1 is if I just take the pawn and take the free pawn and maybe try to defend it. I don't know why I was so stubborn, and I didn't never face this in my life, so I decided to push and try to play for Smith-Morrow gambit with my pawn being here. And you'll come to realize why that's a problem. So here he played c3, he took, and I gambited the pawn. I'm like, look, I came to play the Smith-Morrow, we're playing the Smith-Morrow. Win or lose, I'm playing it. And then he took, of course he took, and then I took, and now he's a pawn up. Instead of, so he gambited his pawn, I ended up reverse psychology through a reverse Uno on him, and now I'm a pawn down instead of being a pawn up. And then he pushes, which is a good move, and I thought, even if he pushed, his pawn is way too overextended, and it can't be defended easily. Okay, the knight can defend, but my pieces are just in time to come in and grab that pawn. And that was my thought process. So first I wanted to give up the light squared bishop, and the reason I wanted to do that is when I bring both my knights in, I wanted to castle quickly. And I thought if I could castle quickly, then I would have an advantage, since he needs a long time to castle. And now it's already +2 for black, as you guys can see. So this move alone cost me another pawn, because you'll come to see why in a second. So the knight comes, and I trade, and now I have an isolated pawn here. But this pawn could be an asset, because it's going to protect the center pawn. And then look at that center space. He has 2 pawns here. I need to really prepare this break, and he can like defend against it anytime. And he has this center, so he's controlling these 2 squares and these 2 squares in the future. So if I don't get out of this mess now, I'm gonna have a really hard game to play. So I go knight back, trying to trade that pawn as fast as possible, and I see that he has this check, but I thought that if I develop my pieces after he takes his pawn, I have 4 pieces, and he has only a queen and a pawn on the board. So that's what happens. He checks me, I block, he takes, and now I develop my last piece before I castle. And here, okay, I'm 2 pawns down, but I'm about to take a pawn, and I thought that because I had a lead in development that I would be better. So I knew all of this was gonna happen. But you keep hearing everywhere that okay, a lead in development sometimes is compensated for a pawn, but only if you can directly justify. Like here I thought, okay, he can't castle, not anytime soon. So this is justified. Like I have a lead in development, the rook is coming, the queen is coming, and by the time he even tries to get out, I'll already have an attack before he castles. He moves the queen back. I didn't want to leave this pawn before he could defend it, so I took it with this knight, and now he pushes. He pushes to try to make room for his bishop and get a pawn in the center. So I go back, and here he plays bishop here. And now it's almost equal for both of us. So even though I'm a pawn down, it's almost equal because of the lead in development we were talking about. Except, here I castled. And castles is horrible. And the reason I castled is because I thought my king was extremely safe after I take, move, and get my rook here in the attack. So if I thought if I can get my rook here, it's gonna be hard for his bishop to be developed. Maybe he'll have to fianchetto, but by the time I could line up an attack here on this pawn and win it back, and if I win this pawn, then it's a 2v1, and I should be going into a nice endgame that I would like. But I failed to realize that this queen is actually in a nice square that's not convenient for my king. So he was in time to bring his rook in, and there's only one move to save this entire position and keep it almost a draw. Only one. And it's not that hard to find. So his threat is either to take me and win this bishop, or to check me if I move the bishop and take the queen with the rook. So how do you save the bishop and save yourself from check to not lose your own queen? Just move the bishop to a square that does both. And I saw that, and I thought that if I move here, he can just take me. He can take me, and there's two threats. But I failed to realize that that's made in one, even though I had 10 minutes. That's what happens. So sometimes you get so nervous, and it just, everything leaves your mind. You stop thinking that, okay, this is completely fine, because it just looks scary right out of the opening. I'm a pawn down, it just looks scary. So I completely missed it. And I went here instead. I was like, I don't know where to go. I looked at this, I'm like, I don't like it. He can take me with check, and now my queen is also attacked. Failed to realize that there's mate. And I'm pretty sure if we played for this here, I would have had maybe a better game than him, because my ideas are clear. Weak pawn, almost weak. Move the king and maybe even make an attack on this side. But I just hung my bishop, took with check, and then went back here. Actually, no. Took this check and thought, okay, maybe I can try to save this by going on a rapid attack against the king. And now black is +6 easily. A piece. He's a piece up, but he's +6. So he goes here to defend the pawn, and I throw in this tactic. And if he takes, the rook comes in to win the queen because it's pinned to the king. He doesn't take, of course. He moves here to attack. I show him that knights can move. So he shows me that. I show him that knights can move, and I hop here attacking the queen. He shows me that queens can give check. Then I go back to block the check. And here, when he played knight at the board, I was back up. Imagine, he played one developing move, and his evaluation, I know a lot of people here are probably going to say don't always look at evaluation and stuff like that, but like in moments like these, it's pretty clear on where you can have the advantage. It's not like the computers are looking at something no human can't. Here the position is pretty simple, and it's as easy as always look for checks. And I looked at this, but after the rook blocked, I just didn't know what to do. I just didn't know. I could have maybe tried the perpetual, get my rook in, and that's the only way to keep the advantage. But I played rook here, thinking this was good. and now he's winning again. The move here was to give check, rook here, and this rook. See, that's how brutal chess is. You have to play this rook here. If you play this rook here, it's back to he still has the advantage. You have to move this rook and leave this rook for this file. This is, see, like, I don't know what to say. I probably don't want to play anymore, but I mean, hard. I know you guys hear this again and again, but I want you to hear it one more time. I want you to hear it 1,000 more times from me. Chess is freaking hard. Like, the fact that if you move this rook, thinking that this rook can still be in the game to provide a pin is wrong. You have to go here, queen has to block, now you go here, and the attack is just brutal. It's brutal. Like, you have the king has to block, and yeah, if the king doesn't block, if you play something like that, then as simple as rook d5, and yeah, if he can't take, obviously, and you're attacking this pawn, if you go here, then rook cd1, and look at this attack, who's saving him? And now the knight's coming in soon. Like, it's bad. anyways none of that obviously happened. Instead, I went rook here to attack the pawn, and I saw that bishop blocks, but after the check, which I played, so I played a move too late, he moved his king, and I thought here was the first time in this game that I had a chance, even though I was wrong. And the reason I thought I had a chance was because if I can open up the two rooks towards the king by sacrificing a few pawns, then I might have an attack. And my queen's still on the board, so mate threats could be always more possible. And I just moved my king. He got his knight in, tried to trade as many pieces as he could, and now the plan that we talked about, opening up the board, it was successful. I saw exactly that you could do that, so I sacrificed this pawn, took the knight, and now f4 is possible. So I played it, and there's no checks or anything, and now the king is pinned, the queen is pinned, and the board will open up. So he plays rook here first, I go check, he blocks me, and now I go here, and then he moves his king, and I take, no, and now he plays the best move, e4, and now look at this flashy move I played. I lost this game, but this was a pretty flashy move that I played. I played queen d3, and now also, can we give a shout out to the opponent? He played so solid. He made sure, I'm gonna tell you how solid he played. You're gonna see a move and you're gonna be like, okay, this guy is not giving me 1% chance of trying to attack him. So the king moves out of the way, I take the pawn to open up the center, and now he defends the queen. Some of you are looking at this, you're like, why? This is how solid my opponent is. Instead of doubling up or doing anything, he's making sure that this check, winning the queen, never happens. Even if he, I don't know, delayed it for a move, like king goes here, like it would still be possible, but he just played extremely solid, defended the queen from any of this, and continued to pin me. Instead of moving the queen, he continued to pin. And then I defended my queen and attacked his bishop, so he blocked. And now I go in here to attack the rook, try to do as many forcing moves as we can, and now the evaluation is plus 2.4 for black. So after opening up the center, we got better chances. Instead of being completely losing, we got a bit more chances. Here, look at that move. You guys ready? Tell me you play solid chess without telling me. Rook a8. Rook a8. Instead of defending and maybe after I take the pawn he has connected rooks, he went rook a8 to get out of the attack and just defend this pawn. He's like, there's no attack against him that he can afford spending time playing rook a8 and moving that rook again in the future. And when he played rook a8, I knew, like, I had a feeling this game was already over. But I'll never resign, so I played queen here, another flashy move to teach you how pins work. I'm defending the rook, I'm trying to attack I'm trying to do something, I don't know what I'm doing, trying to get in here. And so he attacks me, now I give him the opportunity to move the rook. I move here to pin him again. I think this whole game was a pinning practice for me. I didn't come here to win, I just came here to show people that I'm doing the Lichess puzzles of pins. And now he wants to trade queens, and of course I couldn't, because the only advantage I could have is try to mate him with these 2 rooks and the king in the center. And then he plays here, so I try to go behind and mate him on this side. And then he moves his king. Extremely solid. Again, just playing so solidly, knowing that even if the rook comes in and the queen comes in, he can always run away. And the rook came in, and now the rook blocks. And I gave a check, and here's where I resigned. Here's where I resigned because I had nothing. And I was extremely pissed because that bishop was the most powerful piece in his whole arsenal. His whole arsenal, that bishop, was so bad. I blundered the opening, but now I know exactly the reply for people, which I want to show you. So if you ever play the Smiths Morra and you ever face this, simply take this pawn. You simply take this pawn. Knight f6, you simply take this pawn. It doesn't matter. Here, you can even take the queen, trade, and then play like another developing move. And now he plays e6 to defend the knight because he can't even move it to a worse square. And that's it. Just take and double the structure also. So not only do you have an extra pawn, you also have an isolated pawn to play against. And this is just beautiful. You're 0.8 for white, and you should, in a classical game, win this game. So anyways, that was game 3. I'm blaming it on the night out, on the hangover, on my friends who invited me, on everyone but myself. So I don't take accountability for my own actions. But yeah, this was the game, guys. Game 3, I lost it. I have 3 more games. I have to wait 4 hours to play the next game. So I went around and watched a lot of grandmasters play and IMs and upstairs, because we play in the basement with the rest of the losers. And yeah, I went upstairs, I watched a few games, loved every game that I watch. It just, I would love to be at some stage in life to play chess like these guys. They don't play like, I've realized they don't play boring positions most of the time. Every time they like have imbalances, play fianchetto setups and attacking setups, like it's beautiful chess. And that's what we aspire to do one day. And I hope throughout this tournament series people get motivated to play in tournaments, because chess is beautiful, and especially in real life in a tournament setting, nothing is more satisfying. So I urge you guys to look at any local place that has tournaments, whether they're rated or not. Just go have fun. They're the best experience. Anyways, enough of that. Let's go to game 4. See you soon.